What can you say about John Faso, the man who served in so many capacities for the state? He is a leader in so many ways, not only in the Senate, but in many of the things that the Conservative Party holds dear. He knows much more about redistricting than I do. And he has a wealth of information. He's done a lot of work for this party, and you should be really glad that he has your back, as you should have his. Please, without any further ado, the Honorable John Faso.
Ross, thank you very much, and thank you for your service on the Independent Redistricting Commission. He did a great job. He worked hard, as did his fellow commissioners. So thank you, Ross, for everything you did. Let me just say one thing. What the remarks we just heard from our Cayuga County District Attorney, this is the issue in New York State this year. If there is any seat, Assembly, Senate, congressional, local election, any seat that is not being filled by a qualified candidate, shame on us. Because this is a year, this could be the reverse of 1974, it could be the reverse of some of the Democratic years. This is going to be a very good Republican conservative year, not just in New York State, across the country. It is our obligation to make sure we have every seat filled, and hopefully every seat filled with a qualified Republican/Conservative Party candidate. We have to win this year. And the reason you just heard from Brittany, the abject failure of the Democrats and their one-party control in Albany. Bail reform is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that they're doing. You saw in New York City, 800,000 non-citizens have been given the right to vote in municipal elections. And you know what? That is coming to a city and a town and a county near you unless we can change the direction of this state. Now, Jerry asked me to come to talk about redistricting, and there's a lot that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks on redistricting. Just in the last half hour, the Democrats have released their congressional plan. There are going to be two different plans, one for the Congress and one for the Senate and Assembly. The congressional plan, I've just whirled through it, is a disaster. They have needlessly fragmented counties, cities, towns all across this state. They have destroyed communities of interest, all in an abject power grab for Nancy Pelosi. They have made no secret of their desire to reduce the GOP representation in Congress from 8 seats to 3 seats. This is a plan that they are attempting to accomplish that in. And that's why for Congress, I don't care what our little petty disputes are, we have to have united Republican and conservative tickets everywhere in the state. For the state assembly and Senate, I don't care what our little disputes may be, who someone doesn't like, who was offended by someone 3 years ago or 10 years ago, or how Jerry offended me 30 years ago. The fact is we have to run as a united ticket. Now, where are we in this redistricting process? Well, they are going to they've introduced a bill today. They intend to pass it on Wednesday. No public hearing, no citizen involvement, no public discourse. They want to jam it right through. We have, thankfully, the voters in 2014 adopted a constitutional amendment which created that independent commission that Ross served on. But more importantly right now, because it has been taken out of the hands, the legislature has assumed it because the independent commission couldn't agree. No real great surprise there. But we have now, for the first time in our history, standards in our Constitution that the voters approved. And those standards will give us the ability to fight this in the courts. Now, some might say, well, you know, the Democrats really have most of the judges in the state. That's true. But I'm not prepared to concede that every single Democratic judge elected is a political hack and isn't going to read the Constitution. Because what does this constitutional amendment from 2014 say? It says, and I pulled the sheet out here, it says that we have to consider protection of racial and language minorities. That's Voting Rights Act. That's clear. That's federal law. We're going to follow that. It's in our Constitution. It says the districts have to be nearly equal in inhabitants. And that's something that we've always done under the federal law, especially for congressional districts. Then it says each district shall consist of contiguous territory. I can tell you, just reading briefly the bill that they put forward for Congress, they have non-contiguous territory all over the place. Do you know Oswego County was contiguous with Erie County? Did you know that? Well, that's what you're going to see in this bill. Did you know that they've now broken up Albany County and they've put the town of Bethlehem and the town of Queens in my old 19th Assembly Congressional District? They say contiguous territory. Each district shall also be compact as to form. Well, you see the map, it's gonna look like a Rorschach test. It's just splotches all over the place. It is not a map that is contiguous with compact territory. And it says, and this is significant because this is the anti-gerrymandering provision that was copied from the state of Florida. And other states have this provision in their state constitutions. It says, districts shall not be drawn to discourage competition or for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring incumbents or other particular candidates or political parties. The commission shall consider the maintenance of cores of existing districts. They didn't do that. The pre-existing political subdivisions, including counties, cities, towns, and communities of interest. I can tell you, just looking at this congressional bill they put forward a half hour ago, they didn't do that either. So this thing is ripe for litigation. And we have been working with Jerry Kassar and with Nick Langworthy and others for the last 6 months, really the last year, to try to make sure that we are prepared, because litigation is going to be the only recourse that we're going to have to stop this gerrymander. And that's really what it is. When they say that it shall not be drawn to discourage competition or for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring incumbents or other political candidates or political parties, it doesn't say with the exception of the Democratic Party. It says any party. And that's what we have. So over the next few days and few weeks, I encourage you to speak to your candidates, speak to your media. When that legislative plan comes out for the Senate and Assembly, it is going to be just as bad as this, folks. And I encourage you to get on the horn, talk to your local papers, write letters to the editor, put as much pressure as we can, because remember, we're just not talking about an audience in the legislature. We're talking about an audience. Judges read newspapers too, don't they? The judges hear news reports on television and radio as well. And so we have to constantly put out that word that this is an illegal, unconstitutional gerrymander of our state where they are trying to rig the political game for the next 10 years. You know, we can have all the great candidates we want, but if they've so rigged these districts that it becomes impossible to succeed, you know, we're not going to have every year in this decade that's going to be like 2022. We're not going to have every year where we have a president who has a 60% disapproval, job disapproval rating in New York State. Joe Biden, 60% disapproval in a state he won by 30 points in 2020. So that is what we have going for us. We have the national environment where Joe Biden is unpopular, where we've seen the results of his policies, economic, fiscal, inflation. Everyone sees it when they go up to the gas tank, the gas pump. They see it when they go into the grocery store. They see it when they look at their paycheck. Oh, they got a raise, but I got a raise of 5% and inflation 7%. I mean, inflation is eating away at the savings of retirees. It's eating away at the ability of the average family in the state to put food on their tables. That's what's happening. So we've got this issue going for us. We've got a president that committed the ultimate sin of he completely embarrassed our country and humiliated our military with this botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's an outrage. And look what our adversaries are doing with it. Do you think Mr. Putin would have 100,000 troops and tanks in Belarus and on the Russian border with Ukraine if the United States hadn't shown an abject weakness and if this president hadn't shown abject incompetence in Afghanistan? That's what's going on. And with bail reform and raise the age and all of the other things, non-citizen voting, $2.1 billion last year for illegal immigrants to get unemployment compensation. A program, by the way, that's probably rife with fraud. And they want another $3 billion this year. So we have the issues. We have to leave here united. We have to go home and bury the hatchet if we have to do. We have to make sure we have every spot for Assembly and Senate, Republican, conservative, everywhere in this state. That's really what we've got to do. That's what this redistricting is about. So you're going to see the Democrats push this plan through this week. We have to also talk to our legislators to make sure they understand this is not the time to cut a little private deal for themselves. This is the time for all of us to stick together. We have to fight this gerrymander at every level. So, Jerry, Mr. Chairman, thank you for all of your leadership and support. I also want to say thank you to Ambassador Ronald Lauder and the Conservative Party last year. You know, if we hadn't worked together to defeat Proposition 1, it would have been a lot easier for them to do what they want to do on this redistricting. But because we defeated Proposition 1, it's harder for them to pass this plan, and it's also we have more protections for Republicans and conservatives in this state going forward because we defeated Proposition 1. And that was because of the Conservative Party and Ron Lauder and everyone working together. So thank you, Jerry, for all of your leadership on that. Thank you to the Conservative Party for what you did. It's really a pleasure to be here. And, you know, my wife said to me, I said, you know, I was thinking, you know, this is going to be such a good year. I've run for office 14 times. And I ran twice statewide. You know, I narrowly lost to Hevesy by 3 points, and then he went to prison. And then I got blown away by Spitzer, and then he should have gone to prison. And then I had the great honor to serve in Congress. And I see one of our former colleagues, Anna Marie Burkle, here as well. And I want to tell you what a great honor and privilege it has been for me to run and to serve with the Conservative Party at my side. And I truly appreciate it. And as I told my wife, no, I'm not running for anything this year. And she said, no, that's what I told you. You're not running for anything. But this would have been a great year for me to run. And I'll tell you, this is going to be a great year for all of us to get out there, preach unity, stick to these issues. We can go to the public in New York State and talk about the failures of Joe Biden, the failures of Andrew Cuomo, the failures of Kathy Hochul, and look at what this legislature has done. Criminals get a pass to go free. It's really outrageous. And even Eric Adams agrees with us on bail reform and these other issues. So let's go out there and fight. Let's go out there and win in 2022. Thanks so much.
I thought it was just Tom Brady's wife that waited when it was time to retire, right? So, hey, time for a couple of questions. Who's got some questions out there? I see that hand in the back. Jack?
But John, do you have an idea what the timeline's going to be? You know, I'm thinking about petitions here.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm thinking about where our challenges are going to put us in 1 month.
Okay, so we know what the political calendar is. The political calendar basically says petitions go out right around March 1st. And it says that they have to be handed in by the first or second week of April, something like that. I predict, I am making an assumption, because this is going to wind up in court. This congressional plan certainly is, and probably the legislative plan is. Someone is going to sue. That's to be certain. You could be in state court and federal court. What's happened in other instances when this has occurred is that the courts push back those petition deadlines. Sometimes they've pushed back primaries. We've seen that in the state of, trying to think, there's one state in particular that, North Carolina. North Carolina has a primary that's been pushed off 2 months because of litigation. I'm not predicting that, but we have to be flexible on be prepared when the final lines come down. If the governor signs it and lawsuits don't succeed, be prepared to run your candidates, get your petitions out, and judicial conventions. Don't forget about judicial delegates that we have to do by assembly district. But this is going to be, Jack, everyone is going to be in flux. And we just have to really keep our ear to the ground and wait for the play to get called, because it's going to happen quickly. But remember, no one has to live, they only have to live in the county, not the assembly or senate district, in order to run. So if someone is over here, their house is just outside the district, they have a year after they get elected to move into that district to serve in the assembly or senate. Congress, I mean, you could live in Southampton and run in Buffalo, because that's the way it is. Anyone else got a question?
Have you seen the map yet?
The congressional, I haven't seen a map. All they did was put out the census tracts and the towns and counties in each district. And so they'll say, yes, the county of Steuben and the county of Cattaraugus and Allegheny, and then these census tracts in Broome County, and these towns in Cortland County. That's how they do it. But it's almost unintelligible to read it in New York City. It's very difficult to figure it out.
John,
Bill?
The bills are up, the bill number is up. If folks want to go online and look at it, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
Is
but
this the
you can't
congressional
figure
bill or the
out
legislative? Congressional bill, yeah, that's what I was saying before. I was scrolling through,
Yeah.
and the bill number, Bill, is what?
Yeah, it's Senate 08 17 2A.
Oh, that's a bill drafting number. The number is,
We have the actual number.
Yeah.
I think about it, you're right. 8172A.
Right.
okay, that's it. So, but, you know, information is going to come out about this very quickly, but remember what our message is. This is an unconstitutional gerrymander by the Democrats who brought us bail reform, who are trying to rig the political map in their favor. That's the message.